Pakistani Prime Minister Imran Khan has reacted angrily to the decision by the Indian government to revoke special status for Kashmir.
More about what is happening with Indian-controlled Kashmir than the people who actually live there, and that is because it is under a broad communications blackout as we speak.
The consequences of that occupation have been heard in the UN Security Council.
Curfew and restrictions continue for the 7th straight day.
US President Donald Trump tweeted that spoke to my two good friends, Prime Minister Modi of India and Prime Minister Khan of Pakistan, with reducing tensions in Kashmir, a tough situation.
मैं समझता हूँ कि ये नरेंद्र मोदी ने एक स्ट्रेटेजिक ब्लंडर कर दिया। मैं कश्मीर का एम्बेसडर बनूंगा।
Assalamu alaikum. You're watching Views and News, and I'm Faisal Rehman live from our Islamabad studios. Today is the 25th day. I'll repeat, this is the 25th day that curfew has been imposed in the Indian-occupied Kashmir. Shops are closed. Hospitals are receiving patients of which we call the pellet gun victims on almost regular basis. When you talk about the scarcity of food, scarcity of water, scarcity of medicine, I think this is a much common phenomenon out there at the moment. Thousands have been arrested and have been taken away from Kashmir and have been locked up in various jails all over India. And we've also heard that, forget about the second tier, the third tier leadership has also been picked up. Whenever they hear about any protest, they raid there and pick up innocent Kashmiri civilians who are just begging, I would say, just begging for freedom. Out there now, things are not that great, as we have already mentioned. Narendra Modi, as earlier said by the Prime Minister of Pakistan, said that Narendra Modi has actually committed a political and a strategic blunder. So we'll also talk about that where is it going to lead now. As far as the diplomatic efforts are concerned, Pakistan is on a constant move. They've spoken to the Prime Minister of New Zealand. They have also spoken now to the King of Jordan. They've also had a word with other countries, including the French. He also had a word with that, and when you talk about other Muslim countries, obviously we've reached there as well. But having said that, nothing is happening so far. People are only talking about the humanitarian crisis out there. If you're also showing the visuals, if you're lucky, you can see them. But otherwise, since there's an absolute cutoff of Kashmir from the entire world, there is no communication out there. The internet is not working, so the case with other radios or television for that matter. So we're not getting much news. But what you have heard so far, what we have been able to learn, is that situation out there is extremely, extremely dangerous. People are being killed, people are being injured, women are being raped, just to make sure that this is what we will do to your women if you will come out to protest. Though it's an indigenous movement, Pakistan has been there to support them politically, morally, diplomatically. Now, a lot more is needed. And when we say a lot more, what exactly is that supposed to mean? We will also be talking about that. As we talk about the plight of the minorities in Kashmir, we all know what is happening to the Sikhs out there, to the Dalits, to Muslims, to Christians. They are being forced to convert into Hindus. Now, this is what the latest phenomena is. We've also learned that the Indian government is offering a lot of jobs to the Kashmiris inside the Indian-occupied Kashmir, but they have totally refused it. All they want is freedom and their right to self-determination that has been taken away, that has been snatched, revoked, and has been abolished by the Indian government. That article was 370, which actually gave the special status to the Kashmiri people. Now, since there is a lot going on, people are talking about maybe a possible war between the two nuclear rivals, I would say, the nuclear neighbors. As we all used to say, that Kashmir is a nuclear point, is a nuclear flashpoint. Actually, it has proven that now. Let's see where it leads. We want peace, not only for Pakistan, but for the entire region, whereas India and its designs, obviously everybody is aware of that. The Hindutva and the RSS ideology that has been forcefully implemented everywhere. So instead of a secular India, it is going to become a Hindu's Hindustan. To talk about this, we have with us in our studio, let me introduce you to our panelists. We have with us, on my right, is Mohammad Khalid Khattak Saab, former ambassador, senior diplomat, sir. Thank you very much. And Ambassador Saab has not only served in various other countries, but in particular, he's been also in India. So that is going to be pretty important to talk about. But along with Ambassador Saab, we have with us Air Commodore retired Basit Saab, who's a senior analyst. And in a little while, we'll be also joined in by Dr. Khurram Iqbal. He's a foreign affairs expert. But starting off from you, Khattak Saab, now let's start off from this very interesting statement of the Prime Minister Imran Khan, where he said that Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister of India, has committed a strategic blunder. Well, when you look at from their point of view, people are very happy. They think that India always claimed that Kashmir was their own part, and now we have formally taken over and we have made it a part of the Indian Union. So when you talk about the union, means that their currency is there. Now the flag which is fluttering out there is of Indians. So things have changed. I mean, the realities on ground are changing, and I think with the coming days, a lot more is expected to be different than normal, sir. Your take.
Well, to start with, Prime Minister Imran Khan's view that Modi has committed a strategic blunder, only history will tell that. So, better thing would be to leave it to history, and the more important issue is that if he has committed blunder, how we are going to exploit blunder of Modi. Do we have a strategy for that? To what extent we can go to support the Kashmiris? Have we drawn that extent? Are we clear about it? To our good luck, the status quo in Kashmir, in IOK, has been changed by India, not by Pakistan. Now, you see, for this reason, the responsibility lies on India. Otherwise, think of it. We have been, by and large, living with this status quo. Our naivete can be gauged from the simple fact that by appointing a diplomat as a president of Azad Kashmir, we thought we were internationalizing the issue.
Don't you think that was a good move, sir?
No,
because
it's a good move, yes.
Sardar Sahib himself is a very well-spoken man, well-educated, knows the...
Yes, Masood Khan is a friend and he's a very sound diplomat, very great diplomat. But the point is that these issues, or such issues, which have a history, where communalism has kicked in, where the Cold War has come to impact it, or frozen it, where the nuclearization of the two states, Pakistan and India, has in a way impacted it, its status and everything, This is symbolic. This is symbolic, yes. And, the most important thing is that unless and until we are able to change the ground situation in an IOK in our favor.
Ground situation seems to be in your favor, sir.
In our favor.
Yeah, even now, isn't it in your favor?
It is partly, only to the extent that the Kashmiris have risen against, India. But the way they are bludgeoned, the way RSS irregulars are moving into the valley and occupying, lands. So,
sir, there was this very interesting photograph in which the Indian law enforcement agencies are distributing swords, this long swords. And
yes.
this is the basic weapon they use. I mean, whenever the Hindus, they kill Muslims, I've seen they're using swords. And on top, another interesting development, sir, that is about those who were martyred during the clashes, the Kashmiris I'm talking about. The Indian government and the authorities out there who have imposed curfew, they are not giving them the death certificates, even so that the world will know about the number of people being killed by the Indian forces.
That's right. And then when it comes to international pressure or something. Given the fact that India is an economy of scale, now the French are more interested in their Rafale deal with India than with the human rights of Kashmiris. And expecting French, you see that they would, care more about the human rights, was to begin with wrong. And that explains the position that France took place even in this Internal Security Council session. Similarly, you must have noticed one thing, that the world is increasingly getting used to genocides. Whether it was Balkan, where even the UN troops, the Dutch troops, were looking the other way around when there was a genocide.
Massacre was taking place.
Massacre of Muslims was taking place. And that problem got solved because NATO kicked in. Bill Clinton kicked in, and Bill Clinton kicked in because of the German special interests in Croatia. And so the problem was solved. Similarly, you must have seen that what has been the reaction of the international community to the human rights situation in Syria. 500,000 people have been killed. Close to, 6 million displaced, or perhaps more, internally and externally.
Few people say it's almost 1.4 million, sir.
Yes.
Sorry, 14 million, sir. 14 million people.
14 million. Similarly,
1.4 crore.
Similarly in Yemen. So, this aspect of human rights.
It's been neglected, sir. So many people died in Yemen. Today I was just going through this story that the rebels, they have taken over Eden out there, sir. Now, you're talking about these rebels fighting against the Houthis, basically. Not the Houthis, but these rebels, they're fighting against UAE, Saudi Arabia. I mean, they are equipped with the latest weapons and everything. And look at the bombing taking place out there. Look at the diseases spreading out there, sir. There is an absolute chaos. Nobody took notice, primarily because were these the Muslim states? Now, this is another question, that maybe the global agenda, or this one world agenda, or a unipolar kind of a concept, that means that, yes, the West has taken over all the existing resources out there. But when it comes to the human rights issue or otherwise, the eyes are closed. Not even the media is reporting in an appropriate way. Sir, don't you think this is the time that Pakistan should realize, and Pakistan should reconsider and revisit their foreign policy? Because most of the friends they did not support, and most of those countries whom we expected to show solidarity with the Kashmiris just backed out, except for a few. Sir?
I personally feel that we should not have expected much support from these quarters, because
So we always talk about the Muslim Ummah, we always talk about the Arab friends, the G6 countries, or for that matter, sir, the Arab League and so on and so forth.
Look, we walked out of the OIC meeting when it was held last time in UAE. So this is what our stance is with the Muslim Ummah and all that. So when we have our own interest, we participate. And
is it primarily because we did not support Saudi Arabia and the UAE against the war in Yemen, sir? Is it because of that?
It is, but
Could be, because I've met a few Arabs when I was there, sir, and he said, "Are you Pakistani?" I was sitting in a restaurant, and I said, "Yeah," and a young Saudi Arabian guy in UAE, in Abu Dhabi, and he said, "Well, you betrayed us." I said, "Listen, hold on, what?" And then I gave him my point of view, but this is what the general perception is, or rather was at that time, that we thought that Pakistan is going to be with us in this war. And I said, we played a neutral role. Why should we indulge in somebody else's war? We have paid enough price, by the way.
Exactly. Pakistan government is there to support if the holy places are threatened. But if not, Pakistan is not willing to participate in the war and quarrels between Muslim countries. It should not. We have our own interest, and the Arabs have their own interest, and they have very categorically shown that they're in this shrinking oil market of the world. They are there to jealously guard their share, and Muslim Ummah is their second priority. Their business interests dominate.
It's
their
everywhere,
thought.
sir. Absolutely.
So why should we expect that? Look, we have to put our own house in order. We have to gather our own strengths rather than getting support from others. And we have to be realistic. Today I was thinking that there used to be an organization, RCD. It has vanished because of the changes, the global changes which took place. We sort of moved away from it. But now we have hardly any regional forum to project our point of view. SARC is dead. India has killed it. Since last about 6 years, meeting has not been able to take place.
It was always dead, but now it's been buried, I guess.
Exactly. The last rites have to be performed. Otherwise, it's dead. It's not been buried as yet, but it's gone.
So we do understand that Bangladesh is going to oppose. So the case with Afghanistan,
this is what
Bhutan.
I'm saying.
I mean, these are the countries under the influence of the Indians. What about Sri Lanka?
Sir, this
Now
is what
that
I'm
is something
coming
pretty
to.
important as well.
This is what I'm coming to. Now there's a new organization which India has created. This is BIMSTEC, Bay of Bengal Institute for Multi-Sectoral and Economic Cooperation, Initiative for Multi-Sectoral and Economic Cooperation. So this is a replacement for SARC. So we have to find a replacement for ourselves.
So you have
and
been basically, sir, Pakistan, I mean, definitely, we should have done this a lot earlier. Because now we are in a state where we are confused that, okay, this doesn't matter. I think it's an absolute failure on our part. So, sir, if you allow me, sir, I'll just come back.
I just want to say one word.
Quick, sir.
That we have to sort of review what we have done and what we have achieved.
Absolutely.
And find some new grounds. Rather than repeating the same old thing, brotherhood, ummah and all that, it has not worked in the past.
Absolutely. It will
It's
not work in the future also, sir.
So
The
now
dynamics,
we have
the
to
global
find
dynamics
out
have changed.
who are our
Correct.
friends and who are standing by us and what is the room of maneuver for us and operate in there. We have to sort of...
You have to see your given circumstances. You need to
more
work
than
within
anything,
those. Yeah.
we have to work on our economy. We have to be economically strong.
I'll come back to that point, sir. But first of all, sir, thank you very much, Khurram Saab, for taking your time out. Now, Dr. Khurram, a couple of points. Now, first of all, sir, this concept of Muslim Ummah, because I'll be very blunt. Now, I don't know why I really want to talk my heart out. The point is, sir, Israel doesn't have a problem with Pakistan. It's in a different part of the world, all right? The western part of the Arab world, let's put it this way, much away from Pakistan. Now, they had an issue with the Arab world. And just because of that, on the basis of morality or some sort of a commitment, we do not even recognize their existence. Whereas most of these Muslim countries, including Jordan, including Turkey, including Egypt, and the list goes on, they have got great ties with them, open ties, embassies and everything. So what I'm saying is that when you engage, I mean, we always depend Muslim Ummah, there are 57 countries. We always thought that those Pakistan plus 56, let's put it this way, would be supporting Pakistan. Reality is different, sir. It's all about economy, it's all about money, it's all about the international interests. Now, this concept to me, sir, it doesn't exist anymore. If Iran and Iraq can war, Syria can war, have a fight with somebody else, Muslim countries are fighting among each other. So if you're fighting amongst each other, the point is that there is no concept that Muslim Ummah, or maybe this was supposed to happen. Now what?
Oh, you're absolutely right. Gone are the days when the foreign policy of different countries was guided by norms, values, principles. Now it's the age of pragmatism. Now foreign policies of different actors around the world are guided by economic interests, as you have said, pragmatism and national interest. What has happened in case of Kashmir, I think it is a great manifestation and indication of this new trend. Whether there's a realization on Pakistan's side, I think yes, under the current regime there is a realization, because we have seen Foreign Minister of Pakistan stating that quite openly, and also the Prime Minister of Pakistan, that we have to fight our own war. Nobody would come and rescue us. It did not happen when we fought a war against India in 1965, same happened in 1971. So under these new circumstances, we have to basically shape a new foreign policy paradigm in Pakistan. And the most important component of the new foreign policy paradigm must be the economic muscle. With a weak economic muscle, we would always find it difficult to put forth our foreign policy agenda. Today, if India it is now has become a stigma. International press is zooming in on all the human rights violations that are taking place in Indian occupied Kashmir. But still, You have seen how United Arab Emirates and Saudi Arabia have responded. They have not taken a clear stance on the issue of Kashmir.
What do you mean by clear stance? They have practically supported the Indians.
They have.
Awarding him the highest civil award. What is that supposed to mean? And the Saudis have done the same.
It is
Look at the way when he goes and meets Mr. Rouhani. Look at the way he meets Mr. Netanyahu, for that matter, hugging, and look at the body language recently during the meeting between the US President and the Prime Minister of India, for that matter. Another very important aspect, sir, which I would like you to comment after the break, is that in 1965 or even in 71, sir, you had a lot of support from the Iranians. I mean, we were not born, but we have heard that at that particular time, Pakistani jets were basically stationed in Iran. And according to certain sources, we ended up getting about 90 F-86 Canadian-make Sabres from Germany by Iran. Correct, sir? Is that a part of history? This is what we have. So if you had a commitment and a support of that sort.
To be verified. To be verified.
Sir, the man from the Air Force is right here, correct, sir?
We had some support from Iran.
And even from the Gulf states as well, in the form of fuel and otherwise.
Yep.
Now it's not there. So you need to understand that the only thing you're depending on and relying on is a nuclear weapon, by the way. And that is pretty interesting. We'll talk about that right after this break, sir. We'll take a break. After the break, we'll return. Please stay with us.
It's time for Isha prayers in Rawalpindi, Islamabad. People in other parts of the country may offer their prayers according to their local timings.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح
Welcome back. Dr. Khurram, yeah, you were interrupted before the break, sorry.
How the things happened in 1971 when we were provided strategic depth by Iranians, we were given some sort of support from the so-called Muslim bloc as well. The main reason is that the disparity between India and Pakistan was not that stark as it is today, militarily and economically. Economically, Pakistan was perhaps doing much better compared to India during those days, but things have changed during the last two, I would call, lost decades. Those last 2 decades in which Indian economy grew by 7% a year, and we struggled a lot on the economic front. So that is something which we need to fix if we need to find out solution to the problems of Pakistan's image internationally, our foreign policy challenges, and the international support on Kashmir.
9/11 primarily. Things have totally changed. Ground realities have changed. Dynamics have changed. Global alliances have changed. Everything has changed, by the way. But we haven't changed.
Yes, it's mainly because of the economy, and we are still under the new dynamics of a different world. We are still struggling to find where do Pakistan belong to. International politics has changed for good. The international politics was shaped by American hegemonic role before 9/11. Now there's emergence of new powers, including China, Russia. India itself claims to be a pole of this multipolar system. But what we see at the moment is, even despite diversifying our foreign policy options, number of major players around the world, including Russia, has not supported Pakistan's case on Kashmir as it should have, as we were expecting. And again, mainly because of the economic reasons. Macron, he was requested by the Indian side to have Modi invited to G7 summit. And Macron knows that India is going to purchase another 36 Rafale aircrafts from France. So that's a big deal. That's
over $10 billion deal.
That's yes. €9 billion deal. And of course, Macron for France, these norms, these principles, these ideas, doesn't matter when it comes to a deal of €9 billion. Because at the end of the day, European economy is also slowing down, it's suffering, and $9 billion is a huge amount.
Yes, on the basis of morality.
What do we have to offer in terms of economic incentives? Unfortunately, nothing.
Yeah, that's true, sir.
Well, you see, one factor that we are forgetting in the case of earlier conflicts between India and Pakistan is Cold War. So Cold War, in a way, it's strategic straight jacket, you see, made it impossible, you see, for huge changes to take place. For instance, in 1970 war, after the loss of East Pakistan, India unilaterally announced ceasefire. It was not announced by Pakistan, but it was announced by India unilaterally. So that Cold War period ended with the result that you have new forces and base forces like fascism, like ethnicity, you see, phobia.
So when you talk about the Cold War, I mean, please correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, do you think when the Russians, or the Soviet Union for that matter, on one side and there was another block of the USA, there wasn't much difference. I mean, I think even the Soviets had an edge as far as certain military technologies are concerned. I mean, they had an edge even then. I mean, out of, I think, 250 or something, they were much advanced than the Americans in almost 150. But my point is, sir, do you think that all those wars fought between Pakistan and India were not fought on the basis of ideology or the basis of the existence of Pakistan? Rather, it was part, in one way or the other, it was a part of that Cold War that we were in the US camp, they were in the Soviet camp, and we fought.
Frankly
they had
speaking,
vetoed Kashmir so many times, the Russians.
If you go into the background, how these two countries came into existence, one would come to the conclusion that communalism, actually, which fed into, you see, the relations between Hindus and Muslims, that to start with, Pakistan's creation was considerably to this communal strain in India, which has always been there. Just because Akbar got married to Jodhabai or took her as his wife didn't mean that India was secular. You know, it's a secularism at best in India has been virtual. Whenever
but they have been able to sell it, or rather sell this perception very well, sir.
No, they have been, whenever put to the test of reality, it has failed. And, well, in 61, India had all the soft image working for him, biggest democracy, etc., etc. But in a clash with China, because China had a brute force, or China, you see, on the ground, you see, was stronger, India's got a bloody nose. So what I'm saying, you see, be a realistic person. Let's follow realism. You have to change the ground situation in UK. Now the choices is a conventional war, which I would not like to have. But if there's some kind of indigenous insurgency, by all means it should be
The
supported.
Prime Minister has very categorically mentioned about this false flag operation, sir. And now when you talk about this, I mean something like Pulwama, let's suppose that happens, which is most likely to happen because the way they are dealing with the Kashmiris out there, and they'll start blaming Pakistan, they'll start blaming a certain Muslim group, and then they'll do something similar, what they did on the 26th of February.
Listen.
And maybe they'll get a better response this time.
Listen, you see, why we should be bothered? If we have already said in advance, you see, this is a possibility. And they are doing nothing much, you see, to put pressure on India to stop its atrocities. And if something like Pulwama happens, so what? So bloody what? So, I mean, why we should be blamed? And even if are blamed, you see. Look, this is a word when Taliban were declared as terrorists by United States. And today, United States is talking to Taliban.
Because they have forced them to do that.
Yes, they want...
The ground realities in Afghanistan, I mean, we all know, sir. The interesting part was that the Taliban eventually said that we are ready for the talks, but we won't stop, attacking the law enforcement agencies in Afghanistan.
So, you see...
That's the level of dealing there.
And the world is not that much concerned about the human rights. The world's concern is that here are two nuclear powers, nuclear countries, and because, as you said, that it has become a flashpoint, nuclear flashpoint, or at least it has the potential to become a nuclear flashpoint.
Definitely.
Yes, this is the concern, and this is, where you see they talk about peace, they talk about other things, and Francis was very right. I had mentioned it earlier that this Rafale deal, and for this kind of a deal, French would do anything. In any case, French people are used to occupations, it's and dependent on others to liberate them. So, it's not a kind of a psychological, problem for them, you see. During the Second World War, you see, to save Paris or their buildings, they surrendered, and very few people know that de Gaulle's declaration for resistance was broadcast on Waterloo Day.
Ah, okay. So the entire world saw it.
The British Foreign Office ensured, you see, that he declares it on that day. De Gaulle was very uneasy about it, but they said that, Johnny, you have to do it.
Oh, and they
so this
eventually,
is a nation, these are kind of nations with whom we are dealing.
Sir, looking at the current ground realities in Kashmir, the kind of strengths and weaknesses which Pakistan has at the moment, the kind of, I would say, change the Indians are going through, the kind of alliances which have recently emerged. We always saw China is going to be our partner, and if somebody does something to Pakistan, they would intervene and they would attack. It is not going to happen that way. It doesn't happen that way. Now, sir, dependence. I mean, now the Prime Minister also said that forget about the rest of the world. We will be with them, and what we'll do? We'll stand, and the red signals would be there on the roads at around 12 for half an hour. People would just stay where they are, or rather stand up for the cause and all, and at least show the solidarity for the cause now. And we call this the Kashmir Hour. Now, such acts, do you think, sir? Because all the Pakistanis, they all know and understand, and they have got a certain sympathy for the Kashmiris. And obviously, the level is different in various groups and sects. But do you think such acts would really make any difference?
Faisal, let me say that we are very emotional people. When something happens, we quickly want to do something. We want to hit back at the other guy. In international, in this world, you just don't hit back if you don't have sufficient power. You don't destroy yourself. With two nuclear states, it's mutually assured destruction. So that is the last resort. And one has to see if that final point has reached when we are ready to destroy everything for the sake of one principle. It's a principle. It's our principle stand. granted. But are we ready to indulge into a war which can escalate into a nuclear confrontation? So if that is not so, then we have to be more sure-footed in our steps, in our communications. Every day we can't say something that let's close the airspace. Someday you say that let's do something else, let's go to ICJ. These are various ideas. So these ideas have to be synthesized and some sure policy measures have to be adopted. And I think so. In the present situation, one is the diplomatic offensive, which is being rightly guided and conducted. That is the need of the hour. Second is, look, we are, the Prime Minister asked for the nation to gather at 12 p.m. tomorrow and weekly. We need that show of that kind of solidarity. It is important at this moment. But more important is the people outside Pakistan. Pakistanis are always already convinced that ours is a
Talk about the
principal
Kashmiri
state.
diaspora abroad, sir?
I'm talking of everybody else other than Pakistanis. We have to tell them what's the problem. We have to actually, in addition to the diplomatic offensive, we have to launch a sort of communication offensive. We have to reach to all the capitals, all the countries, and tell them what's the problem. What is the legal position on the Indian revocation of Article 370? And how did this problem emerge? That Kashmir was a contiguous area with Pakistan. It was a Muslim majority state, and it should have naturally been part of Pakistan. It didn't happen. So this is a background. The world has forgotten. They have better things to do in their own lives. They have got their own problems. So we have to actually educate the world, and this has to be a communication offensive. We have to, our people have to go abroad, our academia, our politicians, our former ambassadors, anybody who can speak English, I would say, and only because we have good English speakers. But I would extend it to the fact that we should talk to the Russians in Russian. They should be, if there are some people who can communicate in Russian, we should go to them. We should reach to the hearts of the people. And the best way to reach.
By the way, have you done a homework in that regard, sir?
Sir, look,
attitude is the biggest issue. Most of our
Sorry to
since
let me say
sorry
that.
to say that Russian own history teaches this, that first you change the ground situation in your favor, then go for negotiations.
right now it's not the time.
Yes. Before you have changed the ground situation in your favor, going to negotiation is asking for surrender. My 8 years or so in
This
Russia,
is their approach. This is their
in
way
the
of
during
working.
two
Okay.
states, yes. Go throughout their
So
history.
people are also comparing the issue of Crimea with Kashmir, that Russians took over, referendum or no referendum, now this is under their possession.
No.
But the interesting part was that in Crimea, I think if I'm not wrong, so please correct me, 80% of the population was Russian.
And they welcomed it.
Yes, that's the difference.
That's
Over here, it's the other way around.
It's the other way around.
80% of the population is against them, but they're changing the demographics out there. Sir, complete, and then over to you, Khurram Saab.
What I want to say is that I believe that bilateralism will not solve the problem. I agree with that. But short of military intervention, what is the way to change the ground realities?
Support the Kashmiris, the freedom fighters.
That's
Stand
right.
with them.
Yes, that's right. In our own country, like we'll do tomorrow. That's what standing
But
with
what could be
Kashmiris
the fallout
means.
factor now? That is, again, something very
So
important.
this is, please, let's be realistic and see what is doable. And
You need to
the
really
room for-
evaluate your choices.
Exactly.
And then you need to
Exactly.
implement the best and have
And we have to
have
be
a
patient.
backup also.
You know, we lived for 72 years with the Kashmir, with this Article 370, which was almost an academic thing. India was free to do whatever
you
it
never
wanted.
accepted it also.
That's right. So now
There are a lot of ifs
let's
and buts there as well.
let's
Sir.
put our heads down and work on an economic war. Let's fight an economic war. Let's come up.
This is
we
like
have this
sir,
CPEC.
trying to make $1 billion from a single buck. That is something like that. I mean, as far as the situation is concerned. Sir, over to you, Khurram Saab. Options available for Pakistan.
I fully agree with my co-panelist. You need to change the ground situation in Kashmir.
How do we do
you
that?
like it or not?
How do we do
want
that,
it
sir?
or
We
not,
all want that.
this is highly likely
Support the insurgency.
that Kashmir is likely to erupt as soon as curfew is lifted. an armed movement is likely to erupt whether we like it or not.
25th day of the
And
curfew.
all the conventions of international law gives permission to the natives of land to wage an armed movement if their lands are occupied by an aggressor. Gone are the days when world was obsessed with war against terrorism, and every legitimate struggle was labeled as terrorism. Now the times have changed. Terrorism is not on the radar of Americans any longer. If you look at their global defense strategy papers, it's China that has replaced Al-Qaeda as the new threat. So when global priorities are changes, we have to make sure when there is an indigenous armed movement inside Kashmir, Pakistan has to take a clear stance on that. If we fail to do so, transnational Islamist organizations like Daesh will take full advantage of that, as they are doing it in Kashmir at the moment. They are demonizing Pakistan, as Pakistan is a nationalist force. It has failed to safeguard an Islamic cause. So if we fail to offer and extend our diplomatic, political, financial and logistical support
Sir, Islamic
to
cause only
Kashmiri,
Pakistan because we are the neighbors. We are a part and the parcel of the deal. Kashmiris, they have lived with us. Half of the Kashmiris are here on this side, half are there on that side. But sir, when we talk about this Islamization, I mean, countries which are standing with you, like Turkey for that matter, they've supported you and they've always supported you. The point is because we have done the same to Mr. Erdogan, I guess. Now the point is, sir, over here, my question again, I'll repeat, which I had earlier asked Ambassador, that what about the rest of the 56 Muslim countries? No support, nothing. And again, when you talk about Asia, now obviously the heart of Asia, everybody called that Afghanistan, but I think the brain of Asia is in Kashmir. This is where the Americans are eyeing, this is where most of these foreign countries are eyeing, and I read a report, I don't know whether it's correct or not, that they want to make the Indian occupied Kashmir with the help of the Americans and the Israelis something like Switzerland. Top universities out there, they've already asked them to, they'll be giving them 50,000 jobs to Kashmiris inside that. Demographics will change, people will come in, everything is going to get changed. At the end of the day, yes, morality, yes, norms, yes, ethics, yes, values, but sir, economy will also matter. That is the first thing. And Indians, they have enough to look after the affairs out there, sir. Because if we are thinking about changing the ground reality in India, what do you think? What Narendra Modi is thinking about?
Well,
sir?
in your question and your comments, you have, I would say, conveniently ignored the ideational question of the entire debate. Ideational parts have become irrelevant for the states, but not for the natives of Kashmir and Afghanistan. And what is the ideational component of all this debate? It's freedom, it's independence, it's identity. Whether Kashmiris would compromise on their freedom for few universities, and the practicality of this proposal which you have mentioned, it also questions.
Tourism.
America also planned to transform Afghanistan in a functional democracy. Whether they succeeded, they spent 15 years or so, and today they are talking to Afghan Taliban. So what I'm saying is, an indigenous struggle waged by the Kashmiris, we should have no moral questions on that, whether we are going to support that or not. Yes, cross-border something, mobilizing people from this side, that would be counterproductive.
All right. Sir, totally running out of time, sir. Rather, I was told to wrap it up. But if you can take 15 seconds, sir. Quick comment if you want to give, sir.
Yes. Basically, look, the problem will not be solved through this formula of international pressure. When it comes to Ummah, let's not forget that out of the four caliphs that followed Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, 3 were assassinated. And the divisions among the Muslims climaxed in Karbala. Then relations between the Fatimids and the Abbasides and Umayyads, between Ottoman Empire and the Iranians. So this Ummah concept
is irrelevant.
Is not
totally
relevant.
irrelevant. So I totally agree with you. Anyway, sir, thank you very much. Well, it was a pleasure to have you, sir. Kamara Saab, thank you so much. And Dr. Saab, it was a pleasure to have you as well. That's all we have for this week. I'll see you on Monday, inshallah. Till then, you take good care. Have a great weekend. Khuda Hafiz.